Some stories feel like home. They start with a warm kitchen, the smell of something cooking, and voices you've known your whole life. But not every homecoming brings comfort, and not every meal is what it seems. Tonight's story is called Sunday Dinner, a quiet tale about family, tradition, and the things we pretend not to notice. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and remember, sometimes love is the hungriest thing in the room. If you enjoy dark, grounded horror told slow and soft, make sure to subscribe for more stories you shouldn't listen to before sleep. Now let's begin Sunday Dinner. The farther I drove south, the quieter the world became. Highway signs gave way to fields, then to trees leaning over the road like eavesdropping neighbours. The radio kept cutting in and out, static swallowing every word except Mason's name. I turned it off. Couldn't stand to hear his voice described in past tense again. The missing posters had started peeling. I'd seen them fluttering on fence posts like white moths all morning. Mason Clark, 25, last seen near Highway 12, silver Corolla. It didn't seem possible. Mason was the kind of person who couldn't sit still long enough to disappear. By the time I hit the gravel turnoff to my grandparents' house, the sun was low and gold, painting the yard like an old photograph. The dogwood was bare, the grass brittle. The house hadn't changed much, white paint gone grey, the porch sagging in the same places. Smoke curled from the chimney, even though it wasn't cold enough for a fire. Nana was waiting in the doorway, apron still tied, smiling like she'd been standing there all afternoon. "Evan, baby, come on, let me look at you." Her hug was soft, but smelled faintly of bleach and onions. Pop followed her out, shoulders filling the frame of the door. He gave a grunt that passed for welcome, then glanced at the road behind me like he expected another car to follow. "You beat the rain," he said. "That heap still running? It gets me places." "Good," he muttered. "Don't trust new cars. Too quiet. Don't let you hear what's wrong." Inside, the air was cooler, dimmer. Curtains drawn, fan turning lazily. Grocery bags crowded the counter, canned goods, flour, a sack of carrots. The hum of the old chest freezer drifted in from the mudroom. It was the same one they'd had since I was a kid, boat white and scuffed. The lid bowed slightly in the middle. I noticed the padlock was gone, but the latch still hooked tight. "You still running that thing?" I asked. "Runs fine," Pop said, already walking away. Nana laid a hand on my arm, guiding me toward the table. "Sit, baby. We'll do a proper Sunday dinner. Cornbread, greens, roast. Haven't had family at this table in too long." "It's Friday," I said. "Sunday comes quicker when you plan for it." I smiled, but something in her tone didn't invite humour. While she unpacked, I noticed 6 mason jars turned upside down on a towel, drying. The big pot on the stove was clean, but the air still smelled of broth, thick, meaty, faintly sour. Nana moved like someone guarding a secret, quick hands, no wasted motion. Pop came in carrying 2 parcels wrapped in butcher paper. He set them down, then turned one so I could see the pencil label, Roast Sun. Below it, a date, a week ago. Next to that, faint initials, ST or maybe SC. "Friend dropped these off," Pop said. "Didn't get around to cooking them. Good meat doesn't wait." "What kind of meat?" He smiled without showing teeth. "The kind you thank the Lord for." Nana swatted at him with a dish towel. "Don't spook the boy." She slid one of the packages into the fridge. The paper left a damp print on the counter. The spare room still smelled like cedar and mothballs. The bedspread was the same faded quilt with squares from old shirts Pop used to wear. I unpacked my bag, scrolled through my phone. No new messages. Just the last one from Mason 3 weeks ago. "You still coming Friday?" Gonna smoke the ribs early. He'd gone missing 2 days before that Friday. When I came back out, Nana had tea steeping, the kettle ticking as it cooled. Pop was outside, hauling something heavy into the shed. The door stood open long enough for me to see the glint of the bandsaw. I remembered him using it years ago to cut venison. Now it looked freshly oiled. "Sit," Nana said. "You look pale." I sat, and she poured tea into mismatched mugs. "They'll find him," she said suddenly, not looking at me. "Boys like Mason don't just vanish." I nodded. The words landed heavy and empty. "I hope so." "You were close," she said, stirring sugar into her tea until the spoon clicked like a clock. "Always running off together. You remember the old creek trail?" "Yeah." "Pop says it's overgrown now. Trees swallowed it." Outside, the shed door creaked shut. Dinner was simple. Cornbread, sliced ham, collard greens swimming in vinegar. The cornbread cracked perfectly, the way Nana made it when I was little. The ham was sweet, though, too sweet like syrup. "You cook this?" I asked. She smiled. "Pop did the meat." He grinned at that, cutting his piece with the edge of his fork. "I've still got it." "Still hunting?" He shrugged. "When something crosses my path." After dinner, he fetched a mason jar from the counter. "Lard," he said proudly. "Rendered it myself. Keep it in the pantry. Lasts forever." The jar was cloudy white, thick and solid. Something metallic glinted faintly inside, maybe a lid reflection. He noticed me looking and chuckled. "Don't worry. Ain't nothing but the good parts." Nana laughed, thin and tired. "You always were squeamish, Evan. City stomach." "I'm fine," I said, even though the smell of the kitchen, fat, bleach, and something faintly iron, was turning in my nose. Later, I stood on the porch and looked toward the road. The dog from earlier was sitting at the edge of the property, watching the house. Every time I moved, its ears twitched, but it didn't run. There was something off about its shape, too thin in the middle, like it had been starved and stretched. "Don't feed strays," Pop said behind me. I hadn't heard the door open. "They start thinking they belong." Thought maybe it was one of yours. Not anymore. He reached for his lighter, flame flaring in the dark. "You're safe here, Evan. Just don't go wandering after dark. Things hit the road sometimes." "What kind of things?" He exhaled smoke. "The kind you don't want to hit back." I couldn't sleep that night. The house made old noises, pops in the walls, sighs in the pipes. I kept thinking of the freezer's hum, steady and patient through the floorboards. The smell of bleach lingered even after Nana went to bed. I thought of Mason again, of how his mom said he was supposed to go camping the weekend he vanished. The same woods Pop used to take us to hunt. I checked my phone. No signal. The only light came from the hallway under the door, a faint, buttery glow. Then a sound. The squeal of hinges, the thud of the mudroom door closing. I crept to the window. Pop was outside, moving between the shed and the freezer door, carrying something I couldn't see clearly. Metal glinted. He crouched, opened the freezer, and the hum deepened, like something alive turning in its sleep. Then the lid shut, the padlock clinked, and everything went quiet again. When he came back inside, he didn't look my way. Just washed his hands for a long time, water running steady, the smell of bleach growing stronger. The morning came grey and cold, mist clinging to the fields behind the house. Nana was already up, humming something tuneless in the kitchen. The smell of frying oil and onions hit me before I even stepped out of the hallway. "Morning, baby," she said. "You sleep?" "Some." She smiled like that was good enough. The skillet hissed. On the counter were 2 mason jars of rendered fat from last night, cooling, their tops glistening with condensation. She'd lined them up like trophies. Pop was outside when I checked the window. His boots were half buried in frost, a knife flashing in his hand. He was cutting twine off something wrapped in burlap on the tailgate of his truck. I thought it was a deer at first, but the shape wasn't right. Too small, too narrow in the shoulders. I blinked, and he had already thrown a tarp over it. By the time I sat at the table, Nana had a plate ready. Eggs, toast, slices of something pink and fried crisp at the edges. "Bacon?" I asked. She nodded. "Best kind." It didn't taste like pork. The texture was tougher, the salt sharper. I chewed, forcing myself to swallow while she watched, waiting for my reaction like she always did. "You've lost weight," she said. "We'll fix that." I smiled, though the food sat like gravel in my stomach. Pop came in, wiping his hands on a rag that used to be a t-shirt. He dropped into his chair and took the plate Nana had waiting. His knuckles were red from the cold, or something else. "Gonna be a freeze tonight," he said. "Need to get the rest of that meat sealed before it spoils." "What kind of meat?" I asked. He shrugged. "Doesn't matter what kind. What matters is you don't waste it." Nana nodded, scraping eggs into his plate. "Your granddaddy's right. These days people just throw away what keeps them alive." I took a sip of coffee. Bitter, strong. The same kind Pop used to brew when I was a kid, boiled straight in the pot. "You could sell some," I said, trying to sound casual. "If you've got that much stored up." Pop's eyes flicked up, sharp and amused. "Sell?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "No, boy. That freezer's for family." After breakfast, I offered to help in the shed. Pop didn't say yes or no, so I followed him anyway. The morning air was heavy with the smell of iron and soil. Inside, the bandsaw gleamed. The floor was sprinkled with sawdust and something darker, stains that hadn't come from wood. He was labelling vacuum-sealed bags with a black marker. The same kind of handwriting I'd seen on the packages yesterday. Ribs, shoulder, son. Dear? I asked. He glanced over, still writing. Something like that. He placed a finished bag into a cooler filled with ice, wiped his hands and turned to me. You remember how to trim sinew? Not really. Your dad never taught you nothing. He said, more statement than insult. Come on, I'll show you. He pulled a slab of meat from a bin, laid it on the counter, and began cutting away the thin silver membrane that clung to the flesh. His knife moved with the precision of habit. You leave too much on, it ruins the flavour, makes it chewy. The smell of raw meat filled the shed, wet, sweet, and wrong. I wanted to ask what it was, but I didn't. Hand me that jar, he said, nodding toward a shelf. I reached up and froze. On the shelf were several mason jars filled with pale, cloudy fat. Each one had something small suspended in it, bits of fabric, a button, what looked like a zipper pull. Those old things? I said. Preserves, he replied. Everything keeps if you do it right. He set his knife down and gave me a look that didn't invite more questions. Go help your Nana. Dinner won't cook itself. Nana was boiling greens when I came back in. She had a radio on low, tuned to a church station. The preacher's voice crackled through static about sacrifice and the wages of sin. Pop's showing me his methods, I said carefully. She smiled, not turning from the pot. He takes pride in what he does. You ever wonder where he gets all that meat? Her spoon paused mid-stir. The Lord provides, she said softly, and your grandfather listens. I wanted to ask what that meant, but she looked so calm, so steady in her routine, that I couldn't. I busied myself chopping onions. The knife felt slippery in my hand. You two keeping busy? She asked. Trying to. Good. Keeps the mind from wandering places it shouldn't. That afternoon, I walked the edge of the property. The fields stretched out brown and brittle under a silver sky. Down near the creek, I found a patch of disturbed earth. Mud turned up, tyre tracks, boot prints. There were bits of plastic wrap caught in the grass and something that looked like a torn grocery bag. The label had faded, but I could make out a few letters. Son. A low growl made me turn. The stray dog was back, ribs showing through its fur. It stared at me, then padded closer, nose twitching. I crouched and held out a hand, but before it could come near, a gunshot cracked through the air. The dog yelped and bolted into the brush. Pop's voice echoed from the yard. Told you not to feed strays. I stood there heart-pounding, watching the trees swallow the animal. That night, the smell in the house was thicker. Nana had something roasting slow in the oven, herbs and fat popping in the pan. Pop was quiet through dinner, only looking up when I asked where he'd been earlier. Cleaning up the property, he said. Something got into the trash. What was it? He smiled faintly. Don't worry, won't happen again. I couldn't eat much. The meat was tender, almost too tender. It fell apart when I touched it with a fork. The flavour reminded me of something I couldn't place, like pork, but not quite. You need to eat, Nana said, watching me chew. We don't waste food in this house. I'm just tired. You'll get used to it, she said softly. Tastes change when you grow up. After dinner, Pop carried the leftovers into the mudroom. I heard the freezer open, that deep hum again. He stayed in there for a long time, metal clinking, a jar lid popping open, then the soft sound of liquid being poured. When he came back out, he washed his hands for almost a full minute. The smell of bleach spread through the kitchen. I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the house, the floorboards creaked under slow, deliberate footsteps. Then came the sound of the freezer lid closing, muffled voices I couldn't make out, and finally the click of the latch. I checked my phone. No signal. I thought about Mason. About the time we'd camped behind this house as kids, roasting hot dogs over a fire we weren't supposed to make. He'd laughed so hard he fell backward into the dirt. The last time anyone saw him, he was heading down the same highway toward town, right past my grandparents' driveway. My stomach turned. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the smell in the house was just age, the jars just old habits. But when I closed my eyes, I saw that torn grocery bag again. Son, Pop's handwriting. Morning broke pale and windless. The kitchen was already alive with the smell of broth and soap. Nana was humming at the stove, her back straight despite her age. The radio murmured a gospel tune that sounded half asleep. Pop sat at the table with his reading glasses low on his nose, labelling more freezer bags. His handwriting was careful, deliberate. I noticed a few of the markings again. Sun, rib, B, and initials I didn't recognise. MC, maybe. "Morning," I said, voice rough. Nana smiled without turning. "Sleep any better?" "A little." "Good. Busy hands today. Pop's going to have you help clean the cellar." Pop grunted agreement. "Need to make space. Canning season ain't over yet." I poured coffee, but the smell of the freezer hung in the air, sweet, heavy, almost perfumed. "What's in there now?" I asked, nodding toward the mudroom. "Leftovers," Pop said without looking up. Always something to keep. The cellar door was tucked under the stairs where the boards creaked worst. I hadn't been down there since I was a kid. It smelled of earth and dust and something else. Fat, maybe, or wax. The single bulb flickered when I pulled the string. Rows of mason jars filled the shelves. Some held peaches, beans, tomatoes, the usual things. Others were stranger. Jars of clear liquid with what looked like strings of tendon, or maybe onions that had gone soft. In the far corner, a stack of sealed jars filled with cloudy white fat caught the light. One of them had a faint smudge on the glass. I wiped it with my sleeve. Beneath the film, I saw something metallic glinting faintly at the bottom, like a clasp or a bit of chain. I turned it to look closer. The shape reminded me of a bracelet. "Don't move that," Pop's voice said from behind me. I flinched. He was halfway down the stairs, the light throwing deep lines across his face. "What is all this?" I asked. "Preserves," he said flatly. "Old ways. You keep what you can, how you can." I set the jar down carefully. "You sure it's safe to eat?" He laughed once, low and short. "Don't worry about eating it. Just worry about respecting it." He took the jar and set it back with the others, precise as a man placing stones on a grave. "Come on," he said. "Let's get to work." We spent the morning cleaning. Dust, broken jars, mouse droppings. The kind of labour that doesn't leave room for thought. Still, my mind kept drifting to that glint of metal in the fat. At noon, Nana called us for lunch. Cold biscuits and ham, slices of yellow tomato, sweet tea. Pop talked about the county auction coming up, the way people would bid on anything. Nana smiled at everything he said, even when it wasn't funny. When I mentioned Mason, her smile faltered. "Terrible thing," she said softly. "You two were like brothers. Closer than brothers. Then don't torment yourself." She set her hand over mine. "Some folks get called home early. You just don't always see who's calling." Pop gave her a look that made her stop talking. After lunch, I went walking to clear my head. The wind carried the smell of smoke and something faintly sweet, like roasting meat. It came from the direction of the shed. I peeked through the open door. The bandsaw was clean now, spotless. The table beside it, though, was still damp. There was a row of labelled jars cooling on a board, fresh fat, milky and solidifying around little specks of dark matter. A fly buzzed against the window pane. On a hook above the bench hung Mason's camping pack. I recognized it instantly. The faded blue fabric, the torn zipper pull shaped like a small fish. I'd seen it 100 times. My chest tightened. When I heard footsteps behind me, I nearly dropped the pack. Pop stood in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. "Thought I'd lost this," I said weakly. "Must have left it here last time he visited," Pop said. "Nana was meaning to get it back to him." I nodded slowly, pretending that made sense. Mason hadn't been here in years. "Let's head in," Pop said. "Sun's dropping." Dinner was stew, thick, rich, and simmered for hours. Nana ladled it into my bowl, smiling the whole time. "Eat while it's hot," she said. I stared into the broth. It was darker than beef, with a slick sheen of rendered fat across the surface. I could see pale strands that looked like onion, but might not have been. "It's good," Pop said, spoon already in his mouth. "We don't get meat this tender anymore." I forced a bite. The flavour was fine. A little sweet, a little metallic. "See?" Nana said, proud. "You just needed a home-cooked meal." Pop chewed slowly, looking at me like he was studying something. "Man's appetite says a lot about him," he said. "How so?" I asked. "You can tell if he's weak. Some folks can't stomach what life gives them. Others," he gestured toward his empty bowl, "they do what's needed." That night, I couldn't keep still. The smell of stew clung to me. The hum of the freezer never stopped, a constant lullaby from behind the mudroom door. I tried to read, but my mind kept circling the same thoughts. Mason's bag, that glint of metal in the cellar, the initials MC on those freezer packs. When I finally drifted towards sleep, I heard movement in the hallway, the soft creak of floorboards, the freezer lid opening, the quiet clink of glass jars being set down. Then a voice pops low and gravelly, "Good meat doesn't wait." Another voice joined his, a whisper thin and trembling. Nana's. Family keeps what it's given. I lay frozen, barely breathing. A long silence followed, broken only by the hum of the freezer again, and then faintly, the sound of something metal knocking against glass. By dawn, they were both acting normal again. Nana served pancakes with syrup. Pop read the paper, but when he reached for the syrup jar, I saw it clearly this time. His forearm bore a small scar, fresh and red, shaped almost like a bite. He noticed me looking and rolled his sleeve down. "Road work today," he said casually. "You can help dig out near the creek." "Sure," I said. I looked down at my plate. The pancakes were drenched in syrup, but underneath the edge of something pale and fibrous poked out, something that didn't belong there. I didn't eat another bite. In the cellar that afternoon, I found the courage to touch one of the jars again. The fat had hardened overnight. I tilted it toward the light. The metal glint inside wasn't random. It was a bracelet, thick, silver, engraved. I rubbed at the glass with my thumb, and though the letters were cloudy, I could still make out part of the name. Aeson! My hand slipped and the jar hit the shelf with a dull, wet thud. I caught it before it fell, heart hammering. Upstairs, the floor creaked. "Evan?" Nana called. "You all right down there?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, just slipped." "Be careful, sweetheart," she said. "Wouldn't want you breaking anything we keep." Her voice lingered longer than it should have, warm and patient, the way someone might speak to a guest who's already overstayed. The church bell in town rang 7 times, a hollow, distant sound that carried through the fog. Nana was already dressed, dark skirt, pale blouse buttoned to the throat. Pop wore his old suit, shoulders squared, hair slicked back with water. "You're coming with us," Nana said. It wasn't a question. "I don't really—" "You'll come," Pop said, tying his tie without looking at me. "Family sticks together on Sundays." The words made me shiver. The church sat at the end of Main Street, a squat brick building surrounded by parked pickups and sagging bicycles. Inside, it smelled of cedar polish and old books. The congregation was small, faces I half remembered from childhood. Everyone smiled at Pop, nodded at Nana. A few glanced at me like I'd wandered in from somewhere else. The sermon was about gratitude, how the Lord provides, and how waste was a sin against the living. The preacher's voice was slow, almost hypnotic. When he said, "We eat what we're given," half the crowd murmured amen. Pop's head bowed lower than anyone's. When it ended, people filed out for the potluck. Tables stretched across the yard, covered in foil dishes and steaming casseroles. Pop led me to a table near the edge. "Eat," he said. "You look pale." I filled a plate, mostly bread and potatoes. Across from me, Nana chatted with a woman about canning beans. Pop was talking to the preacher, his back to me. Then I saw it, on the preacher's hand, hanging from a leather cord, a small silver charm, the shape of a fish. I froze. I'd seen it before. It was identical to the zipper pull on Mason's backpack. The preacher noticed me looking and smiled. "Lost this out near the highway," he said. "Found it after that poor boy went missing. Shame that." I nodded, throat dry. "Yeah, shame." Back home, Nana started preparing dinner immediately. The freezer hummed louder than ever. Pop carried something wrapped in paper from the shed and set it on the counter with a dull thud. "Family only tonight," he said. "I thought maybe I'd head home after dinner," I said. Pop's hand froze on the paper. "After dinner's fine," he said. "We'll send you off right." Nana shot him a look that was almost tender. "He's tired. Let him rest after." He didn't respond. By evening, the house smelled like fat and rosemary. The oven clicked low, the air heavy. I sat on the porch to breathe, watching the sun sink behind the tree line. The dog was back again, crouched near the ditch. It wasn't looking at me this time. It was looking at the house. I walked toward it, slow. Its ribs moved with every breath. When I was close enough to see its eyes, I noticed something hanging from its collar, a small scrap of blue fabric, the same shade as Mason's backpack. Before I could reach, the screen door slammed. The dog bolted into the field. Pop stood on the porch, one hand in his pocket. "Dinner's ready," he said. I followed him in. The table was set with Nana's best china. Candles flickered in old brass holders. Pop carved at the roast in the centre, his knife gleaming. The meat was dark, marbled with pale fat. Nana ladled gravy, smiling softly. "Say grace, Pop." He bowed his head. "Lord, we thank you for your gifts, for what the land takes and what it returns. May we never waste what you've given." "Amen," Nana whispered. I kept my head down, heart thudding. Pop served me first. The meat steamed, releasing that same sweet iron-heavy smell. I forced a smile. "Looks great." Nana's eyes shone. "You'll like this cut. Real tender." I cut a piece small as I could and brought it to my mouth. It tasted familiar, but I couldn't name it. Like ham, but denser. Nana watched me chew. "See? You remember." "What do you mean?" I asked. Her smile didn't falter. "Family recipes don't get lost, not if you're raised right." Pop poured himself a drink and sat back. Man learns what's good by what he's willing to swallow. After dinner, I offered to clean up. Nana hesitated, then nodded. As they moved to the living room, I opened the back door and stepped into the mudroom. The freezer hummed like a live thing. My hands trembled as I lifted the latch. Inside were parcels wrapped in butcher paper. I pulled one free. The pencil label read, "Heart, Son." Another said, "Leg MC." My stomach turned. I unwrapped one corner. Inside, the meat was pale, smooth, not like any animal I'd ever seen butchered. Footsteps creaked behind me. Pop stood in the doorway. "You shouldn't go rooting around where you don't belong." "I was just—" "You were looking for something." His eyes were calm, almost kind. "You think you'll find it in there?" He took the unwrapped parcel from my hands and folded the paper back neatly. "We keep what's given," he said again, voice low. "Same as always." "Where did it come from?" He smiled faintly. "From the road. The road keeps what it takes, and sometimes it gives back." That night, I pretended to sleep. Around midnight, I heard them moving again. Pop's heavy boots, Nana's soft steps, the clink of a jar being opened. Through the crack of my door, I saw the lamplight in the hallway and their shadows crossing it, slow and deliberate. Pop carried a jar. Nana whispered something I couldn't hear. They went down to the cellar. I waited until the sound faded, then crept after them. The cellar light glowed under the door. I eased it open an inch and looked down. Nana was kneeling beside the shelf of jars. Pop held one high, studying it. Inside, something shimmered under the cloudy fat, metal letters catching the light. Nana said softly, "He's starting to remember." Pop nodded. "Let him. He'll learn." My stomach knotted. The floor creaked under my foot, and Pop turned toward the stairs. I backed away, heart hammering. "Evan," he called. I didn't answer. "Get some rest," he said, voice low. "Big day tomorrow." Back in bed, I packed my things in the dark. I decided I'd leave before sunrise, but when I opened my backpack, something heavy shifted inside. A mason jar. It hadn't been there before. The fat inside was half solid, and beneath it gleamed a small metal shape, engraved, unmistakable. Mason. I dropped it, barely catching it before it shattered. The smell of grease and iron filled the room. From down the hall, Nana's voice floated soft and sweet. Family never wastes what it finds. The dawn came red and low, streaking through the blinds like blood through cloth. I hadn't slept. The jar sat on the desk beside my packed bag, cloudy with fat, the engraved mason glinting faintly at the bottom. I'd stared at it all night, waiting for some other explanation. There wasn't one. The house was silent until the smell of coffee drifted down the hall. Then came the clatter of plates, the low rumble of Pop's voice. I told myself I'd leave now, just walk out and keep driving. But the moment I cracked my door open, Nana called softly, "Breakfast, sweetheart." Her voice was calm, too calm. At the table, Pop was already eating, scrambled eggs, sausage, thick toast slick with butter. His knife scraped the plate with steady rhythm. Nana poured my coffee, her hand perfectly steady. "You're up early," she said. "Didn't sleep." "That's all right. You'll eat, you'll rest. Big day ahead." Pop didn't look up. "You'll stay for dinner. We're not having you run off without saying grace proper. I was planning to head out this morning." Pop's chewing slowed. "You'll stay," he said again. It wasn't a threat exactly, just fact. Nana smiled. "Family always stays for Sunday dinner." I spent the morning pacing the yard, pretending to check my tires, my phone, anything to avoid going back inside. The dog was there again, half hidden near the trees, watching. It looked thinner now, fur matted with something dark. When I took a step toward it, it limped away, tail low. Near the porch steps, I saw muddy footprints, too small to be Pop's, too bare to be his boots. They led from the yard to the shed and back again. I almost opened the shed door, but Nana's voice floated out from the kitchen window. "Lunch in an hour, darling. Don't wander too far." I shut the door and went inside. By afternoon, the house had filled with the smell of roasting meat and thyme. The freezer hummed louder than I'd ever heard it, a deep animal sound under the floor. Nana moved between stove and counter with quick, graceful motions, humming the same hymn from church. Pop polished the table's silverware, each piece laid out with precision. "Your place is at the head," he said. "That's yours." He smiled faintly. "Not tonight." I wanted to leave. Every instinct told me to. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I tried, something worse would happen, something that wouldn't let me reach the car. So I stayed. When the sun went down, the table was set. Roast on the platter, vegetables glistening with butter, biscuits wrapped in cloth. The candles flickered like watchful eyes. Nana clasped her hands. "Pop, say grace." He bowed his head. "Lord, bless this meal. Bless the hands that prepared it. Bless those who came before and those who stayed." "Amen," Nana whispered. I didn't speak. Pop carved the roast. The blade slid through the meat like silk. He set a thick slice on my plate, then one for Nana, then himself. "Eat," he said. I looked down. The meat was pale, too pale for beef, with veins of white fat curling through it. The smell was rich, almost sweet. Nana watched me closely. "Go on." I cut a piece small as a coin and lifted it to my mouth. The flavour bloomed immediately, salt, smoke, and something I couldn't name. Familiar, wrong. "How is it?" she asked. "Fine." I lied. Pop smiled. He's got the taste after all. Halfway through the meal, Nana rose and went to the counter. She came back with a mason jar wrapped in a dish towel and set it in front of me. "Something to take with you," she said. I stared. "What is it? What is it?" She folded her hands, eyes shining. "Family keeps what it's given." The fat inside the jar was still warm. Something metallic glinted faintly at the bottom. My throat tightened. "Where did you get this?" Pop set his fork down. "From the road," he said softly, "where the Lord left him." I shook my head. "No, Mason, he didn't." Pop leaned forward, voice calm. "The road takes, boy. We just don't let it waste." Nana reached across the table, her touch gentle on my wrist. "You were meant to come home. You understand that now, don't you?" The room felt smaller, the air heavy with grease. My stomach twisted. I pushed my chair back. "You're insane." Pop sighed, almost sadly. "Don't talk to your elders that way." I turned for the door, but Nana's voice stopped me. "You'll take your share, won't you? It's all that's left of him." I froze. Behind me, Pop's chair scraped the floor. "Don't make us remind you what family means." The dog barked outside, frantic, sharp. Pop moved first, going for the porch. Nana stayed seated, her hands folded, smiling faintly. While he stepped out, I grabbed the jar. My fingers slipped on the grease-slick glass. The smell of rancid fat burst into the air. Inside the jar, beneath the solid layer of tallow, floated the bracelet, engraved unmistakable. Mason Clark. My stomach lurched. I staggered toward the sink, but Nana caught my arm, surprisingly strong. "You don't waste what's given," she whispered. "He'd want you to stay." I shoved her away. The jar slipped, hit the floor, and shattered. Fat splattered up the walls, across the table, over my shoes. The bracelet clanged against the tile. Nana gasped. "Look what you've done." Pop's boots thundered back inside. "What happened?" "He dropped it," Nana said softly. "He dropped what we kept." Pop's eyes found the bracelet glinting at my feet. His face hardened. I backed away. "You killed him." Pop shook his head. "No, the road did. We just made use." He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. I grabbed the bracelet and ran. The front door flew open, cold air rushing in. I sprinted down the steps toward my car. The dog barked again, closer now, circling the yard. Pop shouted behind me, voice booming, "You come back here!" Gravel sprayed under my tires. I didn't look back until I hit the main road. The headlights caught movement in the ditch. Something dragging, pale and wrong, like a hand half buried in the mud. I swerved and kept driving. I didn't stop until the next town, where I parked in a gas station lot and sat shaking until sunrise. The bracelet lay on the passenger seat, slick with grease. When I went to call the police, I hesitated. What could I even say? That my grandparents were butchering gifts from the road? That my best friend was now sitting in their freezer? I made the call anyway. They sent someone out to the property. By evening, an officer phoned me back. House was empty, he said. Freezer unplugged. All cleaned out. Neighbours said they left early this morning. You sure that's the right address? I hung up before he finished. That night, I checked into a motel. The air conditioner rattled. The room smelled like bleach. I sat on the bed, staring at the bracelet in my hand. The metal had been scrubbed so clean it gleamed under the lamp. I tried to sleep. Somewhere around midnight, I woke to a faint humming sound, low, mechanical, familiar. I sat up. The motel mini-fridge light was on, door ajar. Inside, wrapped neatly in brown butcher paper, was a small parcel labelled in pencil, Roast, Son. My hands shook as I read the faint initials scrawled beneath. EN, the hum deepened, steady as a heartbeat. And from somewhere inside the room, Nana's voice whispered softly, almost loving, "Family never wastes what it finds." If you're still awake, thank you for staying until the end. Some stories don't shout their secrets. They whisper them, softly, between the lines, in the spaces between family, memory, and what we choose to keep. If you felt something tonight, a shiver, a thought you can't quite shake, remember, it's only a story. At least that's what we tell ourselves. For more quiet horror, subscribe and come back next time for another story that waits for you in the dark. Sleep well, and whatever you hear in the kitchen, let it be.